Okay, we will go ahead and get started. I obviously want to thank Jim and Jeff for taking the time to join us here at the chapter. NCAI Connect's a new monthly call, as many of you know, that we're having on a regular basis so that we can kind of let members see what's going on. We've had some really good guests over the last 3 or 4 months, and real excited about Jeff and Jim joining us so that they can kind of tell us about what's going on with AI. We want to ask anybody that has questions that they want to ask to please type them in the chat. Vanessa Hall is going to help coordinate those questions to them. Jim and Jeff can also see them as well, so they could answer them direct, but we want to make sure that we get any of your questions answered by them. We also have Gerald Guadabaum from Flagship is actually going to be joining us on next month's NCAI Connect. So we're real excited about having him. He's in the medical office space and real excited about that presentation next month. We're shooting for the 20th of August, so we will kind of give you more update as soon as we get that firmed up. So excited about that coming. So Jeff, Jim, really appreciate it, and you guys have the floor.
Okay, well, go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was just going to say thanks for having us, Chris. And I didn't mean to step on Jim there. We've got some slides to go over with you folks today and plenty of time for questions and answers. But I'd like Jim to go ahead and start if you would, and let's get her going. Thanks a lot.
Sure. No, happy to be here, President Sherman, and thank you to the chapter, not only for inviting us, but to actually be doing these. It's a fantastic way to kind of keep connected in an otherwise difficult time to stay connected. Jeff and I've got a few things that we'd like to talk about, just in general, some high-level talking points that we'd like to go over, but we definitely want to make sure we address any questions that you have to the best of our ability. So kind of the predetermined things we want to talk about a little bit is the coronavirus, what we're doing about that and how that's impacting the evaluation profession. We want to talk a little bit about a letter that we drafted to the International Association of Assessing Officers, the IAAO, as related to fee simple. There's been a little bit of a controversy in that space, and we feel like we've tried to address that issue the best we can, so I want to talk about that just a little bit. We're going to talk about some of the recent education offerings, give you a professional resources update, talk a little bit about some appraisal legislation, and then give some general AI updates about what's going on. So lots happening during this period of time, but let me kind of start with the pandemic and what kind of is happening with that. In terms of the AI office, I hope that nobody knows this, because if you don't, that means that we're doing our jobs well. But around March 12th or so, we closed the offices completely, and everybody has been working remote since that time, both in DC, in the Chicago office. We also have always had about 10 or 15 people that were full-time remote workers, but we have been working remotely since that time. And I hope that the impact to the membership has not been felt. In other words, I hope that things are going well. We're hearing pretty positive things, but if there's an issue that you're having either as a chapter or as members that I can help you address, please let me know about it. But we have really tried to, overnight shift from full-time working in an office to full-time working remotely. We're in the process right now of trying to determine what returning to work looks like. Likely is not going to happen in Chicago before the 1st of October. It really kind of depends on what happens with the pandemic. Chicago is currently in phase 4 of a 5-phase program, but just as recently as yesterday, the mayor was suggesting that we may move back to stage 3, which would limit our ability to come back to the office. So like most of y'all, a lot of things are up in the air, but we're trying to maintain a high level of service for our members. So that's one of the key things that I wanted to talk about with y'all today. We had a travel ban in place that has generally been lifted now for the staff and for the officers. But very few meetings are happening in person, so very little travel is taking place. Most of it is being done on Zoom calls like this or GoToMeeting. And I think we're all kind of tired of this, but I also think that we found that it actually can be an effective tool. Kind of missed the opportunity to interact with one another on a more interpersonal basis, but so far so good. Things are working well, and we're continuing to monitor that. So please let me know if you're having any issues, and we can go from there. Much like what the chapter is doing here with these Zoom meetings, we've also been doing something we call AI Answers, and it's a weekly session, usually done on Wednesdays. And if you just go to the Appraisal Institute's YouTube channel, just go to YouTube and type Appraisal Institute, you can find a series of these YouTube videos that we've done, and they range from discussing impairment accounting values. We've talked extensively with Fannie Mae and our partnership and what's happening with appraisers in the residential space as related to COVID. On June 3rd, we did a session on state and federal regulation of appraisers and what's happening there. And you can see a few of the others. The one with the Appraisal Foundation I wanted to highlight. For years, John Brennan has been kind of the go-to USPAP answer person over at the Appraisal Foundation. He was a vice president, and John, I think after 15 plus years, has left the foundation. So we did kind of a meet and greet, a Q&A with Lisa Desmaris, who's the new VP over at the Appraisal Foundation, and had a real good conversation with her, discussed a number of the ongoing projects that were happening over at the foundation, including updates to appraisals, appraiser licensing trends, etc. So I want to highlight that one too in particular because, in the last several years, I know there's been a lot of frustration expressed by some members about our relationship with the foundation. And I think this June 17th AI Answers is a good example of how that relationship has dramatically changed, I think, in the last few years. We're meeting with them regularly. I currently have usually about a monthly, if not every other month, call with Dave Funton to talk about things that are going on, things that we have in common, areas that we can work on. Jeff and the rest of the elected officers have been engaging extensively with the foundation. And I would say today that I think our relationship is as good as it has ever been, and maybe better than it's ever been. So real good news on that front for those who are interested in that. And then just some other ones that we have listed here. July 1st, we did one with what was happening with real estate markets and economic developments and so forth. Yesterday, one was just posted on AVMs and the standards around AVMs and what we need to be aware of in that space. So every Wednesday, kind of look for a new one. If you're interested in presenting on a topic, I know Bill Garber would love to have some ideas for that, but just some things that are happening behind the scenes. This is all new. It's all started happening since the pandemic. I want to give kudos to Bill and the team that's supporting him to try and put these things out on a weekly basis. It's all free and some really good information that's being conveyed about what's happening now in the various spaces that we deal with. I want to talk just a little bit about what's happening with AI events. Unfortunately, you know that back in May, we canceled the 2020 annual conference, which was scheduled to be in Orlando. Just didn't think it was going to be a workable deal, and I guess looking at what's happening in Florida today, we made the right call in canceling that. We have been able to reschedule that event for next year. If you want to pencil these dates in, it'll be August 9th and 10th of 2021, still at the same property, the JW Marriott in Orlando. And most of the sessions that you were looking forward to this year, we're just going to move those to next year. So good news on that front. We were able to renegotiate the contract with very, very limited penalties. In fact, I think we probably ended up getting a better deal when it was all said and done. And the next kind of in-person meeting that we have scheduled right now is the LDAC meeting. And that's currently, let me look at my notes here, it's currently scheduled for October 26th through 28th in Washington, D.C. The LDAC Planning Committee is meeting either today or tomorrow to kind of continue to think about whether or not that conference is going to be able to be put on. I think everybody's hopeful that it will still be a go. If you signed up, we still have your registration, and things will be moving forward, but we'll keep you up to date on that. Still probably a little early for us to know for sure, but hopefully within the next few weeks we can make a no or no-go decision on LDAC, but I think we're all hopeful that we'll be able to make that one a go. But stay tuned, more coming in that area as well. In terms of other in-person meetings, really nothing is scheduled for this year right now, with the exception of LDAC and the fourth quarter Board of Directors meeting. Again, we're hopeful that both of those things will be able to continue on, but everything else right now is being scheduled virtually. Even have a finance committee meeting today, in fact, that's being done virtually. So we've migrated and learned the new tools and are taking advantage of them as we can. Okay, let me talk just a little bit here about AI's direction for appraisers and what's happening in the professional practice space in terms of appraisal assignments, market conditions, market reports, etc. You can hopefully see there on the screen. We still are encouraging our members to be careful, not to put yourself in harm's way when it comes to completing an assignment. If you're in a high risk category, obviously do the smart things to protect yourself and others. And I think most of our clients are kind of in that same camp. They know that the appraisal assignments are important, but they also want everybody to be safe and sound. And maybe like many of you, I don't know, we just recently went through rather a refinance on our house. And interestingly, it was hard to find an appraiser who was interested in coming out. We didn't qualify for a waiver. I think that's a good thing. So we had to have an appraiser come out, but the person showed up. We were able to go through a refinancing, and you know,
well, Jim, I got to interrupt you, Jim.
Yeah,
you know,
please.
you live so far out in the sticks that how could you find an appraiser to come out and value that thing? You know, I mean, come on now.
We have horses in Texas, and they are able to go on roads that cars can't. So yeah, thanks, Jeff. Yeah, crazy interest rates right now for those of you who may be in the market for it. We were able to get through that. But you know, the maybe more importantly is kind of how appraisers are dealing with the coronavirus and how is that impacting market conditions. We have been doing a monthly study on the impacts of coronavirus. We've been surveying our membership a little bit about what they're seeing in their market. So we have some anecdotal information that we can get to y'all if you're interested in that. But really just use the tools in your toolbox as an appraiser. You know, how is the market reflecting what's happening in your markets as related to coronavirus? It may be too early to tell, it may be uncertain, and it's okay to say those things in an appraisal report. So we've really tried to encourage people to have these discussions of market conditions within their reports. We do not believe it's appropriate to include a disclaimer or make an extraordinary assumption saying the appraiser is not taking responsibility for the analysis of market conditions, because that is kind of your job. But it is okay to say I've analyzed the market and I can't measure an impact right now, or I can measure an impact either positively or negatively. So those are kind of the things that we've been kind of encouraging appraisers to look at. We have a couple of guide notes that could provide some insight on that. Guide note number 10, which is a guide note that's appraising in the aftermath of a disaster, and also guide note number 12, which talks about analyzing market trends and market conditions. Both of those can be found on the AI's website. So if you have any trouble finding those, let us know, and we'll point you to the right direction. And then there's also a lot of information in the Lum Library. As AI professionals, you have access to that resource. You can get to it online, or you can call or email Eric Goodman in the library, and he will try his best to pull relevant information for you to help you kind of go through that type of analysis. So a lot of things that are out there available for appraisers to kind of use, and just wanted to kind of just touch on that just a little bit. I think by now most appraisers are getting a pretty good handle on how to deal with these things, but we just want to encourage you to analyze the market and report what you're seeing. You can't get in trouble for doing that. In terms of AI professional practice, some of the advice that we've been trying to help appraisers with is stay-at-home orders and what's happening with self-protection and so forth. We definitely encourage you to follow the guidance from the CDC and your state and local governments. Although trying to analyze what that means at times, I think is problematic. The language example in Chicago is fairly nebulous and vague. You could almost fit anything into those, so we know it's a challenge. But one of the things that we have done is created a link on our website for all COVID-19 or coronavirus related information. It's broken down by category for state and federal, and some appraisal issues on there. So if you're on the Appraisal Institute's website, you'll see a scrolling banner drawn across the top. One of the banners is a COVID-19 link that you can go to, and we have a lot of information posted there. So if you're having trouble finding something in your jurisdiction, you may be able to find it on our website. And then finally, I want to talk a little bit about some advice that Stephanie Coleman, our Director of Screening, is given. I kind of hate to read a slide to you, but for those of you who may not be able to read it well, let me just kind of go through it briefly. Stephanie kind of says the best that we can do is talk to market participants, buyers, sellers, and brokers. Get a feel for what's happening with active escrows. Are buyers backing out? Are sellers holding off on listing properties? Are prices being reduced? Are concessions being offered? What's happening with the days on market? Is that increasing or decreasing? These are the types of questions that can provide clues and insight for the appraiser. And these types of reporting in the appraisal report will help you with that discussion of market analysis, which is required per USPAP. And then I guess the last paragraph here on slide number 11, if you wanted to kind of highlight that, is that, from Stephanie's perspective, the appraisal report should address the uncertainty in the market caused by COVID-19. Not as a limiting condition, not as an extraordinary assumption or a disclaimer, but rather as part of the discussion of market conditions. So that's kind of our general big advice. I think that advice is consistent with what you saw delivered in the President's message back on March 27th. And I think that will help you through your assignments no matter who you're working for. We've talked with the GSES, we've talked with FHA, VA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and a number of other government agencies and lenders, and they're all generally in agreement that as long as the appraiser talks about what's happening in the marketplace, describes that, then they're doing their jobs in providing the information that the lenders and clients need to make informed decisions. So I kind of covered that here on slide number 12. They continue, each of these entities continue to provide guidance. They've been doing that since around the third or fourth week of March. I noticed that Fannie and Freddie have recently updated some guidance within the last 10 days or so. So be on the lookout for that if you're in the residential space. But it's all generally in the same vein, report what's happening in the marketplace. Let me go on to some of the webinars that we've been doing. We recently finished one on the impact of COVID On 1 to 4 residential, we had appraisers from the top 10 metro areas go on one of the AI answers and talk about what was happening in their particular markets, and there could be some guidance that could be gained from that as well. And something else that we're continuing to look at is how can we provide the best information to our members on a timely basis. So be on the lookout for more webinars. Some of them have been, I think most of them actually up to this point have been free. There may be a few in the future that there'll be a small charge for if you're a non-member. But for the most part, we're trying to provide good content to people in an important time of need. So pay attention to what we're sending out in the emails. There's some good stuff. And as I mentioned before, here's what the Appraisal Institute's homepage looks like, the little sliding banner. If you click on this, it'll take you right to the COVID-19 information and how it's impacting the appraisal profession. So that's kind of the big picture stuff that is related to what's happening with the Appraisal Institute and the coronavirus. I want to take just a minute or two to talk about the fee simple issue as related to the IAAO. This is kind of an area that if you practice in the property tax space, you've probably run into, probably more likely in that space than in any other space. And there's a kind of a broader discussion going on in the market right now about what does exactly fee simple mean, in particular as related to valuations of property for ad valorem tax purposes. In some states, it's crystal clear. They clearly define what they're looking for, what definition you're supposed to use, what does fee simple mean. And in other jurisdictions, it's somewhat vague. And there have generally been two schools of thought on that. One, that fee simple means vacant and available for sale or lease. And that's generally the Appraisal Institute's definition of fee simple, that you own all the rights to the realty subject to the police powers. And then there's another school of thought that what they really mean by fee simple is occupied by that particular tenant and as an operating business. And as you can imagine, depending on the definition that you use, you could have wide variations in what the valuation is. The Appraisal Institute had a symposium a couple of years ago that kind of brought in a lot of big thinkers on this issue, folks that were kind of well-known operators in the property tax space and the hotel space, and on kind of all sides of the argument. We just wanted to get together a think tank and kind of work through this issue and figure out what the right approach was. And we did that, and there was some discussion during that meeting that we might need to look at changing some definitions to clarify what these definitions meant, so that appraisers had clear guidance. And depending on what jurisdiction they're working in, if it wasn't well defined in that jurisdiction, that we could give members something to work from that would be solid in its foundation. Ultimately, after that white paper, that information went to the Body of Knowledge Committee, who then went through a deep dive on all of that. And ultimately, our decision was to not change our current definition of fee simple, that we thought it was clear enough and that there wasn't really any need to change that. While all this was going on, the IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers, had put out a white paper called Setting the Record Straight on Fee Simple. And in their paper, they really addressed a number of concepts and theories related to the appraisal practice that some people in the AI felt was conceptually flawed and kind of factually inaccurate. So we had another team kind of go through that IAAO paper with a fine-tooth comb and tried to find areas where there was agreement and where there were areas where there were disagreements with our body of knowledge. And we sent a letter to the IAAO on March 31st, kind of outlining these things. You can see a link on the slide there, on slide number 16, that addresses that letter. And, you know, I think you're going to find if you read that paper, you read the IAAO paper, you're going to find some differences there. And but what we wanted to do is just make sure that we provided adequate guidance to our members who are practicing in this space, because there was a void there for a while. The IAAO paper seemed to suggest that the Appraisal Institute had taken one position when in fact we had not. So we wanted to provide a letter to our members and to the IAAO that kind of said, no, here's our position on this. Let us be clear about what our position is. If you guys want to have a different position, that's fine, but this is the Appraisal Institute's position, and that is out there now. We did receive a response just a couple of weeks ago from the IAAO, and they basically, Jeff, if it's fair to say, they agreed to disagree with us. That's probably where the issue will lie for now. But anyway, with that, I will turn the floor over to President Sherman, whose golf game is improving as we speak. Jeff, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, thanks, Jim, and I hope everyone can hear me okay. Chris, is my audio acceptable at the moment?
Yeah, it sounds like you're going to get that noise, but it's not so bad right now. So why don't we start with that and see how it works out.
Okay, great. Well, I first just want to say it's always an honor to be with everybody in North Carolina. I've had a long attachment to North Carolina, starting I think in '92 with maybe our first regional meeting, Region 5. And in Charlotte, and man, that's been a long time. My folks lived in Hendersonville for a while. My daughter got her master's at UNC Charlotte. I had some of my absolute best friends and colleagues are North Carolinians, so it's always a pleasure and an honor to be with you folks today. So let me go on to the topics here. The first slide is relative to some new education offerings that we have coming up. And I think very interesting that all 5 of these seminars are 7-hour seminars. They're all residentially oriented. So the desktop or bifurcated and hybrid, as well as evaluations. It does have a residential as well. The evaluation part is a commercial focus as well. And it will premiere in Florida this August. The next one is one that I really want to emphasize. This is a brand new seminar written by Mark Ratterman. It's Rapid Response Market Analysis in Volatile Markets. This is definitely for residential practitioners. Mark has developed a new tool using technology through MLS, and it will allow for a much quicker, a much better market analysis to be included in the appraisal report. And I think everyone that is a residential practitioner will need to take this. This is a must-take seminar, so keep your eye out for that. This will premiere in late September or early October. We also have a couple other ones, Skilled Crafter of Scope of Work. That'll be a little bit later, somewhere in the October-November timeframe. As well as Supporting Adjustments, the nexus between cost, sales, and income approaches. Again, residentially oriented, probably premiering in November. That particular one is kind of an outcropping of a project team that we have. I think some of you know we have a residential appraiser project team. They're looking for different ways to bring value to our residential members. And last year they had a webinar on this topic, 2 hours. It sold out, maximum of 500, and it sold out. And so this is an outcropping or a development from that. It was so successful. So again, very good program coming up. It'll help residential practitioners for sure. And the last one, of course, is Appraising Condos, Co-ops, and Planned Unit Developments, a major revision of an existing seminar. So let's go into professional resources if we could. And I want to talk about CLP, the Chapter Leadership Program, and Chapter Awards. This will be virtual. It's scheduled for September 21 and 22. All incoming chapter presidents are required to attend. Each executive directors are definitely welcome and suggested that they participate as well. The registration process will be announced shortly, so you'll be able to sign up for that. During the program, we present chapter awards in 3 categories: the state and government relations, as well as outstanding chapter newsletter, and hot topics and special projects. So we'll be presenting those awards during the program. And I'm going to make a little announcement here that isn't on the slide as well. For those of you that come to our annual conference, I mean, everything's upside down this year in terms of what we do. I've had 17 events where I was scheduled to be speaking and attending to represent our members on behalf of the Appraisal Institute. So 17 conferences have been canceled for me this year so far. So we're trying to figure out ways to supplement things. In our annual conference, we always we have some very, very important awards. We present our Lifetime Achievement Award. We present a Special Service Award, as well as the President's Award. But we're going to be doing them at the CLP this year. And so I'm encouraging everyone to tune in for that so that you can find out who our dedicated professionals will be recognized, and again, the chapter awards as well. So let me move down if I could. Don't forget that October 1st is a deadline for 2020 scholarships for minorities and women, course scholarships for designation, course scholarships for candidates, and practicing affiliate scholarships as well. In terms of publications, we've got already out this year is the Residential Property Appraisal book. It's awesome. I've just had a chance to leaf through it. It is a compendium of how to do things residentially. A tremendous book. Look also for the recently released Appraisal of Condos, Co-ops, and PUDs, as well as risk management for real estate appraisers. This would help you in your office management. And finally, our signature publication, which should be coming out a little bit later this year. Jim, do you have any kind of update on what month it's likely? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I haven't asked you that question in a little while.
Jeff, right now, assuming everything goes as planned, it should be available in the first part of September at the latest.
Great, thank you for that. I want to say a couple words about the 15th edition. So this replaces obviously the 14th edition, which was released in 2013. There are significant revisions in the new edition. I'm not going to talk about what they are, but they do definitely have to do with fee simple, with valuation theory, highest and best use, market analysis. There's a lot of really great updates coming in this book. You'll want to have it. I have to take a little side trip here. The dedication of our professionals to help edit this book and write new material it's amazing. It's absolutely, you'd be stunned to see the sacrifice that's made for the profession by our top professionals. And I'm talking about practitioners like you and me. They just dedicate so much time and, you know, at personal cost to the benefit of the profession. So thanks to them. You'll probably be hearing more about that at CLP. But I also want to suggest to some of you that practice in the litigation space, whether you're doing estate work or conservation easement work or eminent domain or property tax, and you have a few attorneys who you do work for regularly, think about buying copies of the 15th edition to give to them to say, kind of thanks for the work that you give me. And by the way, you might think about the PDF copy because it's searchable, and attorneys like that because they can get to what they need to get to pretty quickly. So think about buying some extra copies. I think we have a program discount if you get 6 or more. Jim, is it 20% off, something of that nature? I think so. So, okay. And let's go to the next one, the Lum Library. And Jim mentioned, you know, being able to search for specialty information. The Lum Library expands its search capabilities. It expands its places it can search all the time. So I'm not going to go through the specifics here. I'm not going to teach you about how to search, but it's robust. It's getting better all the time. So what a tremendous member benefit. If you get stuck on projects, as Jim said earlier, email AI, the Lum Library, and ask for information, or you can go on and do your own search. Okay, appraisal portal legislation. Boy, is this good news for those of you that are multi-state licensees. We're very close to seeing a bill introduced in the House that will establish, if it gets passed by the Senate and if the President signs it, which will establish a multi-state licensing portal similar to the NMLS for mortgage brokers and bankers. So it will basically be a one-stop shopping capabilities for appraisers when applying for or renewing licenses and certifications. The hope here is to eliminate red tape. And, you know, I've got a couple friends that have a lot of licenses because they have big national practices. And one person in particular, Pete Corpaz, I think told me that he has licenses in 40 states. He has one person that only works on renewing and keeping everything up to date for him with all these licenses. So if we can get everything in one place for appraisers, I think we've really created something dynamic here. It'll help the profession. Again, you know, a lot of what we do in the Appraisal Institute benefits our members, but it goes well beyond that, and it does benefit the profession. So here's another example of that. So stay tuned and keep your eye peeled for updates on the appraisal portal legislation. Now, a different kind of portal, RESNET. And for those of you that are residential appraisers, I kind of want your ears to poke up here, because this is a way, if you get into our professional development program, the Green Registry program, this is a way to separate yourself in your market. And there may or may not be a lot of demand in your market area for understanding energy efficiency and being able to account for value of these enhanced products in new housing and in existing housing retrofits. You may say, well, I just don't get that. Well, it's changing, and this is going to be more, there's more and more emphasis in this area. So if you establish yourself with lenders as being an expert in this field, they'll come to you when they have this problem, because a new home builder today that builds an energy efficient property and spends an extra $30,000 on those features, and an appraiser gets this appraisal and says, there's no difference between that and another stick-built house. Well, a zero adjustment is a zero adjustment, but is it right? And I think we're all students of valuation. I think we need to know the answer to that question. So what we have here in the RESNET appraisal portal is a significant benefit to our members. We have a special relationship with RESNET, the Residential Energy Services Network. They have 2.75 million homes in their database that have HERS ratings, the Home Energy Rating System, or score. And this index score is searchable for our members. You can see in a zip code how many houses are there, if any of them have sold. There's ways to parse this data so that you can do match pairing and comparisons to look for different effects on value from energy efficiency. So this is a tremendous member benefit. It locks in with creating a specialty through our professional development program. And let me suggest to you that if you have lenders that recognize you for being a specialist in this area, it will also raise your profile every other way with that lender. So you'll become a go-to person for them. So think about it and the impact it could have for you on your practice. Low interest rates are not going to continue forever. I know a lot of people are really busy right now, but kind of put this on your B list for long-term improvement stuff and keep an eye out for it. I think it's a big deal. All right, AI updates. If I could, let me move to, I want to tell you, I think another member benefit that we have is our Find an Appraiser search function. And the way I would describe it right now is it's not maximized. And so we've recognized that, and I have appointed a project team to reimagine, in essence, reimagine the search function and capabilities and how it's going to connect our members to clients and vice versa. So I've got some awesome people that have been appointed to this project team. A lot of you are familiar with Wayne Pugh, past president of the Institute. He's the cool tools guy in the back of ValMag. It's the first thing I turn to every quarter when the mag comes out and see what Wayne's got going on there. So he's awesome. He's in technology with his company big time. John Cirincione in Florida, probably North Carolinian. I don't know how many of you know Adam Johnston. Adam is the chief appraiser at Genworth Financial, and that company is so heavily into technology. That dude right there knows his stuff. And the rest of the people on this committee, there's some client impacts there, both from the government and private side. So we've got a well-rounded project team that I think, in coordination with staff and coordination with our resources, it's going to take a little while to get this put together, but maybe sometime next year, if everything hits the right way, we'll be able to get some real good impact for our members in this area. Again, trying to bring more value to membership for our members. It's a big deal. All right. Let's talk about the upcoming election. I know some of you have concerns about this. A lot of passion is out there in in different corners. So let me just say a few things. July 10th, last week, was a message from me, a president's message, fully describing the process of the election, the nomination from the nominating committee, the board's ability to propose a second nominee, which they have done. So now the board will be making a decision about who the next vice president will be at our August 6th and 7th board meetings. I think the election will take place on the 6th. So we're going to do this via some type of virtual call, whether it's Zoom or some other technological feature, I don't know, but the information will be sent to everyone, all of our members. So you are more than welcome, and you're encouraged to come on and watch the board of directors. This will be the first time this has ever happened. I mean, we've had a lot of firsts this year. That first webinar that Bill Garber put together, we had 2,592 professionals on that call. It was absolutely probably the largest first time or the largest meeting of AI professionals in history. So I don't think we'll get that many for a board meeting because a lot of it's pretty boring, but I know some of you are interested in the election. So what you will be, there's two parts to the election. The first part is a part where the candidates, each of the nominees, get to speak, as well as answer questions from the board of directors. At that point, then, we go into executive session. That means that only the 25, so there are 25 directors of the Appraisal Institute, officers, the chairs and vice chairs, our international member. So 23 of us will be in the room. The two nominees will be asked to excuse themselves from the discussion and debate. Everything in this session will be confidential. And I understand that that's not comfortable for some people. They'd like to know what's going on, and I appreciate that. But there's two extremely important reasons why we do this confidentially. Number one, we want the directors, in the absence of the nominees, to be able to speak freely and to be able to offer comments without any duress. So that will give them the freedom to represent you the way you've elected them to do, to represent and to produce the result in the best interests of the Appraisal Institute. And the second reason is equally as important, and that is to protect the two nominees. If anything is said that is concerning during the debate, it will not leave the room. And so both nominees will not have to worry about issues being discussed outside of that really, quite frankly, belong only in that room. And I know that's not comfortable for everyone, but that is what we're going to do, and it's a well-established policy, and that's where we're proceeding. At the end of the board discussion, we will take a vote. It will be done by secret ballot, and then we will come back on live and announce the results. So everyone will find out who the new vice president-elect of the Appraisal Institute will be at that point. Again, August 6th. And let me just look at a few notes here and see if I've missed anything. I don't think so. Jim, do you want to add any color into that process, Jim?
No, Jeff, I think you covered it. There may be some specific questions, but
Sure.
nothing for me to add at this point.
Okay. All right. So there were a couple of 45-day notice items relative to amendments of our bylaws or regulations. We talked about, and so the Appraisal Institute designations that are being used by non-practicing designated members, they have to indicate that they are non-practicing if they're using their designation. And we also adopted the other 45-day notice item that dealt with valuation practice, the definition or the deletion rather of service as a defined term, and the addition of valuation practice and the resultant conforming changes to other items. So kind of small technical issues there. Here's some other pretty good news for those of you that do conservation easement work. So the IRS was proposing internally to change the way they reviewed appraisers in complying with their regulations. Previously, there was a panel, a number of people that would look at an appraisal report and exchange views. They were proposing to take it down to one person, and that one person would not necessarily have to have been an appraiser. It could have been an administrator. Well, whoa, this is a problem. Any of you know that if you've done any work that involves the IRS and you sign those forms that that are attached to income tax returns, you've got some liability out there. You have liability for ongoing practice in government work, and it's to have one administrator making decisions about the future of an appraiser, and that person's practice was really problematic. So we joined with 9 other valuation organizations in sending a letter of concern about this. And at this point, the IRS has relented, and they're proposing to go back to where they were. So I think we've had a good exchange with them about that. And again, this is a place that, small things make a big difference if you're doing this kind of work. So I just want everybody to know that AI has our eye on the ball on regulations, and we're looking out for you. So that pretty well concludes my talk. I did have one other thing I wanted to mention, Chris, and we kind of covered this in the Region 5 call last week. but because I've got this, the chapter here today, I wanted to mention our Ohio chapter talked when they gave their report about something that they did as a chapter, which I thought was pretty cool. They had a candidate cocktail Zoom. So they did it late in the day. They asked candidates to get on, advisors to get on. We didn't have a big audience. It was probably a dozen people altogether. But just an interaction. You could obviously bring a cocktail to the Zoom call. It was informal to talk about how your candidacy is going, anything we can do to help, that kind of thing, and to encourage new candidates to get involved with the Appraisal Institute. So just a little kind of a heads up of something you might consider in the future, and maybe that'll bring some more value to all of us. So with that being said, I'm going to sit back and give it back to you, Chris, and we'll be happy to answer questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Jeff, and that's a great idea. I like that. I'll pass that on, and hopefully we can do that for our candidates here as well. All right, so there are just a couple of questions, and Vanessa, did you want to read that, or do you want me to? Does not matter.
I can read it if you want me to.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay, so, and this is just kind of following up from a question that was answered by Jim, but Eileen Poulos asked about the license portal and whether or not the work was in conjunction with the appraisal subcommittee and use of a unique identifier for each licensee. And Jim said, yes, that was the plan. So, and then Mike Moody is asking both Jeff and Jim. First of all, they thanked you for your time, and we appreciate you being here today. Mike Moody wanted you to speak to the future of the virtual education, and will it become a permanent option for CE delivery?
So, Jim, let me weigh in, and then you can correct me where I'm making errors here, because Jim knows this thing backwards and forwards, but I'm kind of excited that, you know, we've adopted a new policy at National to permit chapters to go ahead and do virtual seminars essentially through the end of the year. We can't do QE, we can't do designation, we can't do professional development virtually because they require examinations. And again, when we're talking about virtual, we're talking about Zoom calls like this, basically. And it's a different kind of education than our synchronous or our online classes. And yes, I think that, you know, we have an ever-changing environment. As soon as we get something figured out, something else happens the next week, and we have to figure out how to pivot. I think we have a lot of future in front of us with this. In the past, it was required that presenters as well as the organizations involved had IDEC, the International Distance Education Certification, in order to do these kinds of things. That's been waived until the end of the year by ASC, as well as I think a lot of state boards. But Jim, you can correct me on that. You guys have to check with the state to make sure you're in compliance. And so, yes, I do think that we're going to see this extend even further. It's going to impact us. And then it brings me to a larger issue that I'd like to address for a second, and then Jim can step in. We've seen expansion of online education over the last 5 to 10 years. Where we used 15 years ago, the AI led the way because we had classroom education. Our market share has declined. I don't know what it is, but it's not what it used to be. I think everybody recognizes that. Some chapters are having more success with in-class education than others. It always used to be a really profitable thing and helped us with our administrative expenses. Since it's been waning, and so there's a lot more competition now too. A lot of different providers. If you want to set up an education company, you can do it. And it's not that hard now to put out something and get it approved. So there's the slice of the pie that we're competing for is getting smaller as well. So we need to take back the streets. And let me tell you, we're focused on doing this. And it affects national, it affects chapters, it affects all of our members. And we need to figure out the best way with this emerging technology to bring maximum value to everybody. And it's a really tough puzzle that we have to figure out. Now I'm going to sit back and let Jim go ahead and give us the real facts. Mr. Amorin.
Jeff, I think you did a pretty good job. Mike, to part of the question, a lot of it is outside of our control. And to the extent that a state, the appraisal subcommittee and the appraiser qualifications board allows it, as Jeff noted, we're allowing it through the end of the year, because that's kind of what we're picking up from the ASC and from the AQB. Your state may be different, surrounding states may be different, and in fact, we have seen in a couple of instances where a chapter had a class scheduled for, let me just make up a date here, July 20th, and they had that scheduled for a few weeks, but then the state has come in and said, well, we're only going to allow virtual education through July 1st. So the chapter then scrambled to go from virtual back to classroom. We've been encouraging the appraisal subcommittee and the AQB to consider this more long-term. I think that there are some issues that they're going to have to try and work through. Jeff noted this IDEC approval, which is there's all kinds of things that go along with getting this IDEC approval, that you have to have timing studies to make sure that the class lasts as long as you say it's going to. There has to be periodic testing. There's all these things that go along with that, and it's cumbersome. And that's what we have to do today for synchronous or for online. But right now, they've kind of released those shackles from everyone. So we're still pushing it. What I'd really like to see the AQB do, frankly, is allow micro-learning. 1 hour, half-hour webinars, and allow appraisers to get credit for that, because a lot of things can be done in a quick, short burst. People can find an hour to go do something. Sometimes in some states you have to have at least 2, some states you have to have at least 3. So we're working on that. I can't promise you, because so much of that is outside of control, but to the extent that the powers that be allow virtual education, we're going to try and find a way to make sure that AI professionals and our customers can take advantage of that.
Great answers. Great. I just want to make a comment that I think that micro class is a brilliant idea. I've heard people in our chapter say that financial advisors are doing that right now, 2-hour increments, and it's just a really easy commitment for somebody to make. So I think you guys are on the right track, and I appreciate you guys considering those options going forward. Vanessa, do we have any other questions we want to, and does anybody have questions they want to ask? We can even unmute you if you like, and you can ask them directly, or you can send us a chat, whichever's best for you.
Actually, Chris, I have a question, just because I'm the education chair here for North Carolina. So with regard to just only doing CE, and I understand there has to be a test, is there a reason not to use the Pearson testing centers and holding the class virtually and then having someone go and take the test at Pearson? Because they are open, at least right now. So I just wanted to know why, just so that, because it's definitely been a challenge.
Yeah, so Vanessa, part of it is, actually most of it is not an AI edict. It's really coming down from the appraisal subcommittee and the appraiser qualifications board of the foundation. They're the ones that are basically saying only CE, qualifying education, which would have exams, does not count. But that's their rule, not ours. And then your state may be different as well, because some states are allowing it. We did and are in constant communication with Pearson VUE. We're trying to explore right now options that, for example, Vanessa, you could take a virtual class and take the exam wherever you are sitting right now versus having to go to a testing center. because as the testing centers open and close with the pandemic, that's created some issues for some people. So they actually have some technology in place where they can assure that it's you taking the exam when you say you are. And so we're exploring that on our end so that if the states, the feds allow that, that we'll be able to do that. But it's still kind of in the quicksand stage. It's not really sure exactly what's going to happen, but we're definitely looking at that because we're relying on the testing centers, and if they're closed, we're kind of shut down. So we've got to be able to fix that problem. So we're exploring it.
Thank you. So does anyone have any other questions? I guess you can just maybe unmute yourself and chime in if you do. I don't see any other questions in the chat.
Okay, I will say, Jim and Jeff, I can tell you that as the chapter president, I really appreciate all that you do for our chapter. We really do feel that you guys are doing everything in your power to help us. I can tell you that when COVID came, I think we all were just fish out of water, didn't even know how to think about it. And what I really felt when, you know, I was getting calls from appraiser friends of mine that were like, hey, how should we handle this? You know, and when really us trying to wrap our own head around this and how to look at it, I feel like you guys came immediately to the market and to your members and the market as a whole and offered the best option for us to have some understanding. You brought experts that came in, kind of gave us guidance. I know many people have told me how much they really appreciated that. And I really felt like y'all were stepping up, doing what y'all could to help us as much as, you know, help the organization, the industry as a whole. So I really do appreciate that. And I think it's really served our chapter and our members very well to be able to have people that were really willing to step up when it was needed. Because I don't think any of us really had any idea, you know, really how to look at it. And it kind of gave us a central way to think about things. So I really do appreciate that and everything you guys do for the chapters and everything. And I'm fortunate to be on some national committees, and I see how much these committee members, the chairs and everything are really doing everything in their power to bring the member benefits and the services to the members through our chapter. And it's hard to really express that to people, but I can tell you firsthand, I see it when I'm involved in those committees, how important it is for everybody to help chapters and the industry as a whole. So I really do appreciate all y'all's efforts there and joining us here as well on this webinar.
Well, Chris, just I thank you for the compliment. It's always great to be able to be part of the team. I'm telling you, it's not Jeff Sherman, it's not Jim Amorin, it's a whole bunch of people pulling in the same direction that creates value for our members. And, you know, sometimes we get a little sideways, but we're on that path, and we're always looking for new ways, and we have to find the new future before anyone else does, and we're working on it.
Right. All right. I don't see any other questions unless, Vanessa, you see something.
No, are you going to mention our upcoming?
Yeah, why don't you introduce him? We did at the beginning, but go ahead and you can mention him again.
Okay. Yeah. So in August 20th, we are going to do our next NCAI Connect. And we've got Gerald Quattlebaum with Flagship Healthcare Properties. He's going to talk on the healthcare real estate market. And he has, you know, extensive knowledge in that arena. So I know that he's going to, you know, talk and take your questions. So make sure you put your questions together for that. But we're excited to have him. And that's going to be 10 a.m. August 20th.
And I want to also let everybody know that we are really looking for your suggestions on who you would like to see on the next NCAI Connect. So, you know, Claire Alfrance suggested Peter Christensen, and it was a great suggestion. At the time, I did not know who he was, to be honest with you. So I was like, okay. And once I got him willing to do it, and he put on that presentation, I was really excited to have him. So I'm saying that I know you guys probably have some suggestions or thoughts that you'd like to see up here. Please don't hesitate to let us know. You can send us an email or whatever, but we want to make sure that these are really great presenters like Jim and Jeff and the others that we've been fortunate to have. And look, don't put your, keep your goals high on who you would like. I mean, don't think that somebody's too important or, it's not going to be possible to get, because we've been very fortunate and you never know until you ask. So don't hesitate to give us that long shot, because, long shots work too. So just, we want to make sure we get who you guys want us to have, as well as who will be great for the organization and for the industry as a whole. So I really do appreciate everybody's time. I really appreciate Jim and Jeff for taking their time today. And thanks again for everything y'all do for us.
Thank you, everyone here. It's great.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.